Are you able to tilt the camera down just like a tiny
Yeah,
bit?
totally, totally. That's,
Yeah,
is that a little better?
perfect.
All right.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Let's just start with how you're feeling about where we're at. Cases are kind of slowly climbing here. You continue to see kind of high numbers in the province. Ottawa's
Yeah.
kind of caught up for a while. We were below or trending behind the province at least. But we're seeing some higher numbers now. How are you feeling about all of this? How are you feeling about where we're at in the fourth wave right now?
Well, it's we're at where we thought we would be based on the modeling, and I'm weirdly optimistic because unlike this point last year, we kind of know what to do and we have the tools to do it well. What we're lacking, of course, is the political will and public compliance to get that done. But I'm optimistic that we will get it done. And specifically, I'm talking about ratcheting up vaccine uptake really, really high and using tools like rapid tests and mask wearing strategically to keep numbers down. So, as everyone keeps saying, this is a pandemic now of the unvaccinated. So, we now have a population to focus on, the unvaccinated. If we throw all our assets on that population and make them safer, then we have a really good chance of controlling this. So, having a strategy, having the tools, and having an outcome in mind is really going to help us.
Are you happy with our vaccine progress so far and the efforts we're making still to push now? Like we're I think over 80% in Ottawa now,
Yeah.
and the
I,
challenges are bigger now to continue to grow that, right? But are you happy with what we're doing so far?
I think we've done everything that we thought we would do. It's disappointing that we're not closer to 100% of the eligible population. It really should be. So, what is left to do? We have to further incentivize vaccine uptake. I'm fond of saying that the unvaccinated are a heterogeneous group, and they include the hardcore anti-vaxxers, who are actually a small percentage. Maybe, well, I won't guess the actual percentage. The polls do vary. So the hardcore anti-vaxxers, there are the vaccine hesitant who just need some better education, some time with experts, an authoritative voice to bounce questions off of. There are the apathetic who tend to be very, very young, who have a lot of faith in their immune systems and don't see a reason to get vaccinated. And that's the population that we can really do a lot of progress on using tools like the vaccine passport, so-called vaccine passport. Then there are those who can't get vaccinated because they haven't got the social supports to do so. Maybe the vaccine centers are too far and they haven't got a car. Maybe they need time off work. Maybe they can't get childcare and are afraid of the adverse reactions of a vaccine preventing them from doing those things. So for them, another set of policy levers can be applied. So the three groups I think we should continue to focus on the hesitant, who are the subjects of misinformation, the apathetic, who we have levers like vaccine passports for, and the the lowest hanging fruit, the people who just can't get access. They're the ones we really should serve first. So to answer your question, we have the larger tools in play, like the vaccine passport and mobile clinics, but the smaller things need to be applied to better messaging and communication, better access to better education tools for those who are hesitant.
We're just a few weeks into school now. We've got outbreaks already.
Oh, I lost you.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay. So we've got, I think, over 40 classrooms in the city that are isolating out of school already.
Yeah.
Um, what's your take? What's your assessment on that so far, and the fact that we've seen a lot of cases? I think some people are shocked at how early and how quickly we've seen the impacts here. Yesterday, for
Yeah.
example, there was a pop-up testing site at McNabb Arena, and it was one of the only walk-up sites that was open this weekend, and there were people were waiting over 2 hours in line to get tested, a lot of them school kids
Right.
needing to be tested. So how do you feel about all of that?
I think it's a failure of planning. I don't want to point fingers too much because everyone is under resourced and overworked, but we need to use rapid testing at greater capacity, both the rapid PCR test and the rapid antigen tests. And they're distinct because if you're symptomatic, you need a PCR test. And if you're waiting in line to get tested, that's does no one any service. So a rapid PCR test allows you to take a swab at home and to ship it to a lab, and you get a response back within 24 hours. We need that capacity here in Ottawa to a greater extent. The rapid antigen test is for asymptomatic people, and it allows us to take infectious people out of circulation for that day. This should be used at a much larger scale than we use them now. So I think right now governments should be flooding the communities with rapid antigen tests. That's our best way to control the outbreaks now. Now that we have vaccination, and now that the probability of people being infected is limited to this one group, which is the unvaccinated.
Are you confident we can keep students in the classrooms with those tools, or with the tools we have in place right now? Or do we need more to be able to keep the kids in the class as much as possible this year?
I think we have the tools to keep the schools open. We just need to use them to greater effect. These tools include the rapid tests, the vaccination of all the adults that kids come into contact with, the symptom checks, the rapid PCR test to confirm diagnosis, and we can always invest in smaller class sizes, and we really should be investing in better ventilation. At the very least, open windows. As it gets colder, that gets harder. So we have some time now to ratchet up vaccination rates really, really high. Wrap the schools around with a lot of immunity so that the disease cannot get into the schools. That's our best bet, and we can still do that.
You mentioned, and it's something a lot of people have been saying. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated now, but there are still millions in the province that are unvaccinated. Are you concerned at all about the impacts they could still have on the healthcare system? We're seeing parts of the province that are being overwhelmed already, or full ICUs. It's not the case here in Ottawa, but we're climbing a little bit. Are you concerned about the healthcare system?
Yeah. I am concerned about healthcare. Here's why. As you mentioned, millions remain unvaccinated. This was less of an issue a year ago when the dominant strain was not Delta. Delta is so transmissible that it will rifle through the unvaccinated population. Most will be just fine, but a percentage, 1 to 3%, will be hospitalized. And 1 to 3% of millions of people, it's a lot of people needing healthcare services. And a proportion of those will die as well. We definitely don't want that. So that is a concern. As one of my distant colleagues said once, this disease, Delta, comes in like a hurricane, but leaves in its wake a lot of suffering and possibly a lot of immunity. So this will be a short-term suffering experience. In a few months, we'll have so much immunity in the population through a combination of vaccination and recovery that I don't think we'll have to deal with this again. But we're going to have to weather this intense storm of the unvaccinated potentially being hospitalized.
Lastly, all of this is coming with a big day tomorrow. Election day, people gathering at the polls to vote. Is there any concern about that? Is there any worry about the timing of all of this? I know a lot of people have talked about it, but from a health
Yeah.
perspective, an epidemiology perspective, how do you feel about it?
I don't like a lot of it. I think the timing is off, obviously. I think they could have mandated vaccination for all the poll workers. That's not the case here. Distancing may not be sufficient given Delta's transmissibility. However, I do not want to discourage anyone from exercising their voting franchise. This is an important element of democracy, and we should do whatever we can to allow voting to take place. So I encourage people to go early. If you can get time off work to do so, take it. Don't go when it's crowded. And I encourage the poll workers and the poll managers to provide as safe a space as possible. Windows open, doors open, lineups outside, masking all the time, high quality mask, and distancing at all times.
Okay. Thanks for the time, man. Glad we could connect finally.
Absolutely. Thanks for the hair.
Have a good one. Yeah, love
Bye-bye.
it. Bye.